Africa's population is going to double, they anticipate, by 2050. And we have to make sure that the proper things are in place so that they can be self-sustaining. And when I came into Congress, one of the things I wanted to do was focus on foreign aid. It's a well-known secret that I wanted to get rid of foreign aid. But after I came up to Congress, you know, I went through a fast learning curve that you cannot remove foreign aid. But what we can do is we can do it better. And so we looked at the different structures out there. OPIC was a great model because it had returned money to the American taxpayers 39 out of 40 years. And in 2016, it was appropriated $69 million, but returned to the U.S. Treasuries $265 million. So what we did, that was started in 1974, and it hadn't really been updated. So it'd be like driving a 1974 car today, and you can see how outdated that is. And so what we did is we got rid of OPIC, and we put in what we called the BUILD Act, which was authorization to create the United States International Development Finance Corporation. So that removed OPIC, replaced it with what we commonly refer to as the DFC, and the improvements that we have made were many. One of the biggest ones is OPIC was limited to $29 billion in lending capacity. We raised that to $60 billion. But in addition to that, we'd allowed the American government to take an equity stake in a project and bring in private equity. And I'll explain the equity stake that the government takes. So instead of giving money to build a road, say $1 million, and maybe that road doesn't get finished for whatever reason, the United States government winds up, that's just a grant and gets written off, and we get no return on that. What with the DFC, with that equity stake, the United States partners up not just with that country, but they partner up with the equity stakeholders. And then when the project is up and running, they sell that equity stake so that they don't want to own that. They just want to help make sure and ensure that the investment gets put into place, that the right things are done, and that we can move ourselves out of it. And our whole motto as we did this was to help countries move from aid to trade. And the way we saw the best way to do that was to do strong infrastructure investments for the benefit of that country, not for the benefit of the United States. Our benefit is this: if we can help a country become self-sustaining and move from aid to trade, they develop an economic engine because the infrastructures are put in there that will invite more private equity, that will create the economic base for job development and things like that. The other thing that the BUILD Act did is we can lend in the currency of a country, so you don't have to go through the exchange rate. Countries can make payments in that. There's risk insurance in there, risk mitigation insurance. There's the funding to go into a project to do your studies, you know, to make the project feasible. And so these were big things that we could do that we couldn't do before. It's that the BUILD Act authorized the DFC to do. The other thing is, before, through OPIC, we couldn't really partner with other countries that had development finance corporations. With the DFC, we can now partner with any country like Canada, Japan, the UK, Australia, any country that has a development finance corporation. So we can leverage that money we have, that $60 billion, and you can put up to 20% of that in any one project. We can leverage that, and that $60 billion becomes hundreds of billions of dollars if it's done right. And so that, pretty much in a nutshell, is what the BUILD Act did to create the Development Finance Corporation.
In 1960, Africa accounted for 7% of the world population, just 7. By 2018, it's 14.5. By 2050, 23%. If the World Bank's and the UN's projections hold, by 2100, half of the new babies will be born in Africa. Just imagine that. Imagine by 2050 Lagos doubling its population, or Addis Ababa doubling its population. Imagine the pressure that it can exert on education, infrastructure, deforestation, climate crisis. So we have two serious issues. One is population explosion, and the other one, the economy not keeping up pace. Another number for you, in 1960, East Asia was accounting for 2.3% of the world economy. East Asia, 2.3. Africa was 2.2, not far behind. South Asia was 1.7. This was in 1960. By 2018, East Asia was accounting for 15.8%. That was sevenfold increase. Africa was exactly what it was in 1960, 2.2%. South Asia had gone from 1.7 to 4.0. That is an increase of by 2.5-fold. So our economic situation is in a very serious situation. I looked at how we have been performing over the last, from 1960 to 2018. I can only go as far back as 1960 because data starts from 1960. World Bank, IMF, UN, they all give you. If you look at, I start from 1960 and use 1990 as a midpoint, and then from 1990 to 2018. The reason I picked 1990 as a midpoint is that's when the World Bank changed its policy. In 1960, it was primarily financing big projects. Later on, they brought in what they called structural adjustment. And that was, they would come in and tell you, you have to do policy A, B, C, D, E if you want to get money from us. That completely destroyed Africa. It made the poor even worse. By 1990, the World Bank came in and they said that was a clean break from their past policies. And they said, no, from today on, we're going to be a bank of poverty alleviation. Our dream, the bank said, is ending poverty. So the bank became a poverty alleviation. So let's compare how Africa was doing from 1960 to 1990, and how about after 1990 to 2018. Africa was growing on average 3.3% from 1960 to 1990, 3.3%. What about after they changed the policy about ending poverty and so on? From 1990 to 2018, it was only 3.6%. So if there was any difference, it was really a statistical error, no significant change. That is why we keep on saying what has been done in Africa, what has been done for Africa is not getting it right. Now, why is Africa strategic importance for the West? Africa's development now is America's problem, Europeans' problem, and the world's problem. Interestingly, in October 2019, I wrote a piece, and the title was Marshall Plan for Africa Now or Doom by 2050. That was October 2019. And one of the things I said there was, it's in developed countries' interest to see Africa develop. One of the issues I raised was, look at pandemics. If the worst kind of pandemics comes, it's going to cost, developed world very heavily. From Addis, where I am from, to Washington, we have 3 flights every day. So any kind of pandemic that starts in Africa, you'll have it in 16 hours. It's no longer Africa is there, it's their problem, but it is the world's problem. There is also, and by the way, speaking of pandemics, 2 months after I wrote that piece, COVID came. Just a recent study at Harvard, they estimated the US alone suffered $16 trillion because of COVID. That is about 90% of your GDP. And that is their optimistic estimate. It can get even worse. So something that can start in one poor African country or one poor Asian country can devastate a country like the US to the tune of $16 trillion. What if we get another one 3 years from today, before America fully recovers? So that's why I say Africa's problem today is America's problem.